Sixto Sanchez to the IL. Is that the last time we see Sixto Sanchez in a Marlins jersey? Feels like it could be. This is Locked on Marlins.
You are Locked on Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked on Marlins. This is your daily Marlins pod. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, at Miami Marlins _UK. If you are listening to the pod, firstly, happy Monday and welcome to the show. Make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review. This is your team every day. And thanks for making Locked on Marlins your first listen of the day. Reminder, there's a YouTube channel. Make sure you hit subscribe over on the YouTube channel. Join us in the comments as well after these episodes. Let me know what exactly you're thinking. Let me know about your thoughts on the weekend series against the Rangers. Hot start, cold finish. Double blanks at the back end of that series. Sunday in particular was an absolute snoozer. No doubt about it. Trevor Rogers working his way through. We're going to get into that series as well. But the big news over the weekend, Sixto Sanchez to the IL after another sluggish start from Sixto Sanchez. And it feels to me like it's one sluggish start too many. So we're going to dig into that shortly. This episode, though, is brought to you by SupplyHouse.com. And it's the reliable way to get parts fast. Shop your next plumbing, h-vac, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at SupplyHouse.com. All right, guys, so the breaking news, I say breaking, it was over the weekend. Nevertheless, it feels like breaking news still, fresh in my mind. Sixto Sanchez to the IL. You would have seen, if you do follow me on Twitter, posted Skip's post-game comments. He was asked straight up, first question was about Sixto. Of course it's going to be about Sixto. He let out a very telling exhale. It was very funny. If you haven't, go back and check it out. I did share the full post-game presser, but effectively the question was, what did you make of Sixto Sanchez? Skip Schumacher just went and then just kind of called it out to say he was pretty lucky. And it's the same Sixto we've seen. Mediocre, 85, 87, no life, no gas, no juice, no nothing from Sixto. Skip Schumacher, was that enough? You can tell like Skip's had enough of this player. He doesn't manage the roster, by the way. So the roster, the 40-man, the 26-man, it's not his call. That's Peter Bendix's role at this point. But the signals are loud and clear from Skip Schumacher around Sixto Sanchez that he's had enough. And it's been pretty clear for some weeks. We've seen guys underperform. We've seen guys going through slumps. We've seen, some pretty poor performers in the past, season and a third of Skip Schumacher's tenure. Not once have we seen any player slander ever. This includes the worst hitter in baseball last year in Gene Segura. It includes probably the second worst hitter in baseball in Joey Wendell. It includes the worst catcher of all time in Jacob Stallings. Nevertheless, no slander for those guys. But for Sixto Sanchez in particular, called it out. Is it a signal to Sixto? Is it a signal to Peter Bendix? There's no need to, signal out to Peter. Peter Bendix knows. But I find it just super interesting that Skip Schumacher's gone about it in this way. Then we have this outing. Again, another labored outing from Sixto. Same old same. And then, we get the murmurings of, there'll be some conversations and evaluations. The byproduct of that is Sixto lands on the IL. The question at this point, and considering the injury designation, there has to be one. It can't just be because he's crap or lazy. That isn't it's the designation that applies with Major League Baseball. But so they have to put something down as a shoulder impingement, whatever it might be. Kind of feels pretty similar in some ways to Eddie Cabrera, but I don't know. I don't know if there is something, a legitimate injury concern with Sixto, to be honest. Whether there is an injury there or whether this is just a designation to give him a breather? Like, is he struggling? He wasn't supposed to be a starter this year. I think that's the other interesting thing here is Sixto found a role, and that role was in the bullpen. He earned a spot on the roster based on spring, and we've all realized that spring numbers mean absolutely nothing. We saw A.J. Puck turn into the best starter in the history of baseball. And then an inning and a half in, turned into the worst starter in baseball. And so, spring numbers, we cannot trust them. Nevertheless, at that point, the Marlins had so many injuries. They had to have, and Sixto was obviously on the 40-man, no options. But fair play to Sixto in spring. He did earn his spot with the production he put up. However, I remember us all looking at the numbers and thinking, oh boy, if you kind of look past the ERA and you go and dig a little bit deeper, you can see that there's maybe some trouble looming here for Sixto. We then see some outings out of the bullpen. It was not good. It was terrible out of the bullpen. And then because they started so poorly and, few injuries still remained, you have Sixto going in the rotation. And so I do think it's been very interesting the way it's been handled. Because, like I mentioned, spring, no big buildup, no expectations of Sixto being a starter. The question I've got at this point is, has he been set up to fail this year? Many people that are close to the situation would likely say the person most to blame for the majority and for what we've seen from Sixto Sanchez is himself. I don't quite know exactly what that means. So I'm kind of looking forward to understanding what has actually gone on with Sixto when the Marlins finally move on from him. Talk about that shortly, because I think the end is near. But, what we've seen this year, like, again, if you take away the name, I think if you take away the name Sixto Sanchez and you look at anything else, then he's not a big league starter. That's clear. He's not a big league bullpen arm. That's clear. Like, it's time to just move on from Sixto, is it not? Like, why? What are we hanging on for? A guy that's been out for 3.5 seasons that's now back. And there's serious question marks about his commitment. There's serious question marks about his ability. And at this point, you just have to wonder, just move on. Like, why not? I don't know. Very, very puzzling. Very puzzling. But again, like I did mention, he was out of the pen to start the year. He's then been thrust into the rotation. And apart from the first inning, it hasn't been that bad, to be honest with you. I think this is the kind of weird thing is like first inning, putrid. After that, it kind of settles down. I just don't know what's going on. Is it nerves? Like, is Sixto just feeling the nerves and just struggling to just be loose? Listen, because when I'm playing tennis matches, and I'm not a pro tennis player, but when I'm hitting in practice, man, oh man, a forehand's on fire, baby. Topspin's going. Next thing is you're in the match situations, and all of a sudden that topspin forehand, it's not feeling as sexy. The arm tightens up, and feel a bit, bit stiff. I don't know. Is that what's happening with Sixto? Is it mental? Is there a mental blocker with him? Anything's possible with Sixto. However, the question at this point is, do we see Sixto again this year? My honest opinion is no. I don't think we see Sixto again. He's on the IL. I think that gives the Marlins maybe some breathing space. Maybe they give Sixto some breathing room. I don't know. But frankly, the on-field production isn't there. The work ethic clearly isn't there. Skip Schumacher's had enough of Sixto. And at this point, you just have to kind of consider, is it best for all parties to go their separate ways at this point? And I think the answer to that is yes. So he may well sit on the IL for a period. But the reality is, I think all the Marlins are doing is just delaying a decision. There is no value in Sixto Sanchez. There's nothing there. They can't swallow $10 million, trade him away for a couple of flyer prospects. None. Sixto Sanchez is DFA fodder. He will be DFA'd. he will clear waivers and he will be released from the Marlins organization. It's a sad situation in many ways because what we saw from Sixto in 2020 was legit. The injuries happen. Other things have happened. It isn't the same guy. That guy's gone. This is the ghost of Sixto Sanchez right now. And frankly, this season's been scary enough. We don't need Sixto parading around anymore. Skip Schumacher's clearly done. And the reality is there's other guys that should be getting opportunity. For example, Sixto Sanchez, while he's being trotted out there, Rodri Munoz, who came up, performed well, I would say, Rodri. He's been sent down to AAA. Max Meyer's been working his way down in AAA. Like, there's other guys down in AAA that you should be seeing at this point. So I believe the end is here for Sixto. I don't know when it will come, but I think it will come sooner rather than later. And of course, it will drag up a lot of memories for the Marlins. We'll have to reflect on the JT Realmuto trade and finally call that one a bust. I mean, there was still some life in that. We're thinking, is the book closed on this trade? Could Sixto get back to his former glory? No. I'm looking forward to the Craig Mish write-up anyway. I think Craig's got a lot to say around Sixto, and he's tried his best. I think this is the funny thing. Over the years, Craig has tried his best to steer us as best as he could without breaking confidence and trust. It's a tough situation being a trusted reporter and media guy and guy that's close to a team because there's things that you learn, you glean, that can't be shared at that moment in time, or maybe even ever. But clearly with Craig Mish and Sixto Sanchez, he's known for some time. I mean, we've all kind of known. There's no smoke without fire. And for me, as soon as we had that PR puff piece stunt where Sixto was being interviewed, I think it was Carl Seelaff that was rolled in. I don't know, does Carl Seelaff get rolled in? If there's some Marlins dirty work that needs to be done, they just bring him in and go, right, we need to sit down with Sixto. We need to build him up. But the funny thing was, that was just a weird situation, and then it's then been removed ever since from circulation, no longer available on YouTube, none of that. And I think we could all see what was going on. Like, Marlins trying to spin it in a positive way. And it's tough because, a lot of people judge organizations, front offices, etc., by the trades they make, clearly. That's a big trade. You move JT Realmuto and you get effectively nothing back in the end. And this is the challenge with prospects in general. Pitchers, maybe you could kind of call it out as well, but this is the risk. This is the risk. And maybe for a club that's like, their bread and butter is constant trading, they're trying to keep as many like bum trades off the books in many ways. Like, no, there's still time for Sixto. We don't want to get that one on the books. We've already been blasted by the Yelich one. We can't keep selling a rebuild every 3 years, but be terrible at rebuilding. That would be a bad look. That'd be a bad look. Nevertheless, it's been a wild ride with Sixto Sanchez. Craig Mish has tried to steer us accordingly. He's tried to. He's laid the breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs have been there, but we just didn't want to see them. We didn't want to see the trail. We wanted to believe that 2020 Sixto would return. But I feel like there will be no more updates on Sixto Sanchez regarding throwing from 32 1/3 feet. There just won't. I think when the time is right, he'll be on the IL. I don't know when, but I think before the end of June, I believe Sixto Sanchez will be DFA'd by the Miami Marlins. Right. Time to let you know about our good friends, of course, over at SupplyHouse. Yes, sir. And you can get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? No problem. Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM. And order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. All right, guys, welcome back to Locked On Marlins. I went long on that first segment. A lot of Sixto thoughts in my mind. Let me know what you're thinking. Do we ever see Sixto again? Could he be traded? Is this the end? Will he be DFA'd? Who knows? Who knows? Let's briefly touch on the series. And then I also want to touch on a few topics. Pardon me. One of the topics links to lefty woes, which I've got down on the rundown here. I don't know how, but somehow left-handed pitching for the Marlins is unplayable this year. It's been unplayable all year. I remember early in the season, this was the problem. They kept facing lefty after lefty and kept losing. I think I saw that it was Fish on First, I think, put it up there. 2-19 against left-handed pitching in 2024. That's absolutely absurd. It's absurd. The problem the Marlins face, the offense faces, is all of their best hitters are left-handed. And so they're either neutralized or they're platooned. So the Marlins roster construction is badly lacking with right-handed guys, clearly. And so this is the problem. All of the impact sticks, Jazz included in that. Jesus Sanchez, we saw a huge game from him on Friday. But and Nick Gordon too. Like Nick Gordon, it's been a bit of an up and down year for Nick in the short space of time. But, you know, there's been some encouragement. There's been some power, obviously, that we've seen. And, you know, that's the problem. This group, the left-handed sticks, you know, they obviously aren't expected to maybe deliver as much against the left-handed starters. But man, oh man, the lefty woes. And they showed up again against the Rangers. But God, I have to be honest, you know, the Sixto Jose Urena start, and obviously the Marlins won. That was a fun game, and I had a lot of my eyeballs on that live. Like, that's how keen I was. That was after midnight on a Friday in a losing season. Like, I'm watching that baby live. Jose Urena, the Bulldog mentality remains, of course. But the second two games, the offense was blank 2 games in a row. And boy, oh boy, it's just been, you know, it's unwatchable, to be honest with you. At times it feels unwatchable, which is disappointing. Blends me into the bottom topic here. I'm kind of bouncing around a touch here, but Deadwood. I think Deadwood may be a little bit unkind as a term. But I think, you know, what I'm talking about here is, you know, Tim Anderson at this point, the production is absolutely not there. It feels like the mentality, the commitment, all of the things that Sixto doesn't have, I think Tim Anderson is still showing. There's a willingness and a desire from Tim Anderson, and that's saving him. In some ways, it was probably similar to Joey Wendell last year, where Joey Wendell was terrible offensively. Defensively, he was fine. But in the clubhouse, he was a bigger part than maybe would meet the eye in some ways. And it feels like maybe Tim Anderson's in a similar spot. However, it you know, it is pretty frustrating that he's still being seen as an everyday player, seemingly, Tim Anderson. He's sliding further and further down the order. Like, are the Marlins hoping that he finally finds it? I don't know. But we have to be honest, when Tim Anderson was on the IL, Vidal Brujan, Otto Lopez, you know, it was a nice pairing. It was a nice pairing there in terms of the offensive production anyway. There's certainly some question marks, in my opinion, over Vidal Brujan's shortstop defense. Man, I think there's a lot of questions around the Marlins shortstop defense and shortstop position generally. I don't know what the future holds. I'm going to have a deep dive episode on that at some point in the near future. But, Tim Anderson clearly isn't the answer. He's being paid $5 million. It's not a huge investment. Again, the question around him that has to be asked is like, for how long do you just persevere? I don't know the answer. Skip's speaking of him fine, the post-game stuff. When I hear Skip speaking, there's definitely no Tim Anderson slander, not in the Sixto category. Like, he's calling it out, there's frustration, but there's a willingness to put it in. He's working hard. But there's been, last year was horrendous. It was a buy low situation in a position of need. But the reality is at this point that we haven't seen anything, like not one glimmer from Tim Anderson, apart from a miscued RBI single, I think, on opening day. Beyond that, I can't think of barely anything from Tim Anderson at all. Again, you take the name away, you take away the spend. This is a guy that would have been DFA'd and moved some time ago. I get it, the season's still young in many ways, and maybe the Marlins want to get value from their $5 million investment, which maybe means an extra 40 games of Tim Anderson. The reality is wins and losses at this point don't matter, and actually losses are wins in reality at this point. But there's guys there, it's similar to Sixto. There's guys there that should be getting a look, more of a look at shortstop. We obviously had Tristan Gray come up for a bit. Vidal Brujan's up. Xavier Edwards is working his way back. And maybe that's going to be the turning point, is Xavier Edwards when he's ready. Maybe that's the move that kind of pushes the Marlins to make a move around Tim Anderson. The other dead wood, and I think we have to call this out, this upcoming again, is Avisail Garcia. I don't know what the Marlins are planning on this topic area, but I have to be honest with Avisail Garcia. In the short side platoon role, which, as I've already called out, the Marlins faced a ton of lefties early on. Like, Avi was not as bad, maybe. The problem is you bring Avi back up. That means, okay, Dane Myers is then optioned back down to AAA. And, for me, Dane Myers has continued to demonstrate that, there's a big league guy there potentially and should be given an opportunity. The problem is Avisail Garcia, these vets, these old overpaid dudes, Avi, Tim Anderson, they're blocking the development of other guys. And for a team that's in a rebuild and a team that's looking to the future, like, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to block 2 spots on your roster. At least it was 3 if we included Sixto. It's all the same. It's one in the same. Guys that have no roster versatility, that are underperforming, that either are a big trade name or a big free agent signing, and they're not performing. Other clubs by now would have moved on, like for Avi years ago. Other clubs would have moved on, like Tim Anderson, already, and we've seen them already. Joey Wendell signs with the Mets, gone. Signs with the Braves, gone again. Like, other clubs make the right moves. I'm looking around and thinking, why aren't the Marlins making the right moves? If Peter Bendix is so smart and the Marlins front office is that smart, the ones that are asking us to trust them fully, then why can't we trust any of the moves they make? And I get it, they've nailed a couple of waiver claims and stuff, which is encouraging. But in terms of flogging a dead horse, is that the right description? But from that perspective, I need to see more. I need to see a front office that's willing to do what needs to be done. And Tim Anderson, Avisail Garcia, Sixto Sanchez, we know what needs to be done. Let's see if they do it. We'll wait and see. All right, guys. Final ad of the day, and then we will carry on the conversation. I want to talk about some Baltimore Orioles conversation. But before we do that, time to let you know about our good friends over at PrizePicks. Yes, sir. And PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It is the most fun, exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You pick more or less than on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. And with PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into 1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stats projections, and you're locked in. If you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week, from lowering select players' stats projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chance of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. So, what have you got to do? Simply head on over to, PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Reminder, download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Welcome back to Locked On Marlins and me, Peter Pratt, on Monday. Yes, and we're in June as well, 3rd of June here. And thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen, guys. Teaser, I'm going to be talking tomorrow about the Fish on First Spaces, Craig Mish. I love it when he joins those spaces and just starts firing things off. I know he's joined that episode. I haven't listened to it yet. So tomorrow's episode, I'm going to be kind of digging into that, sharing my thoughts on what Craig shared. Some of them he may have covered today. I mean, I'm sure people would have been asking around Sixto Sanchez, etc. But I briefly want to talk about the Orioles and Marlins potential hookup. Hopefully is the wrong way. Probably would have seen the news that the Orioles lost a couple of starters for the year. All of a sudden, their starting rotation and the options they have for a team that is in it, is fully in it, and they've built their club to be, it's prospect rich. It's young guys just balling out at this point. The Orioles look in a great spot for many years, but clearly, if injuries occur, which they are occurring, they're going to need a little bit of support to make sure they can, realize their full potential. I think that's the interesting part. So, in my opinion, the Orioles are absolutely buyers and will be looking for pitching. No doubt about it. We already know that the Marlins and Orioles spoke in some depth during the offseason around Jesus Luzardo. Yes, they couldn't get a deal done. It feels like the guy that they wanted ended up being moved, obviously, to the Brewers. But there's clearly other guys. The Orioles have the system to get a deal done in the realm for Jesus Luzardo, in my opinion. It feels like a great fit. It feels like the organizations have already thrashed out a degree. They've probably had multiple permutations of a Luzardo trade back in the summer. Luzardo's back now. He's healthy for now. And for me, these two make perfect sense in terms of trade partners. The one thing I wanted to call out is a lot of people's minds automatically go to some of the guys that are fringe big league ready. Heston Kjerstad, for example. I don't think that's the right profile for what the Marlins are looking for. So, whilst you may be excited about his profile, he's basically ready ahead of what the Marlins are looking for. We've already seen the Marlins really, for the types of assets they're looking, are, teenagers at this point. The Marlins are looking to get in toolsy teenagers and see what they can do. That seems to be the approach in the main. And I think the headline pieces would absolutely fit that profile. There may be other guys that they end up acquiring that are maybe further on in their development, a bit like the Luis Arias situation. But some of the guys that the Orioles have in their system, I think, are probably a little bit more, at the top end anyway, a little bit more developed. And so they may be too developed for what the Marlins are seeking. Nevertheless, there has to be a fit there. The system is so good. Luzardo, I think, is a perfect fit for the Baltimore Orioles. And considering their window is wide open at this point, the extra 2 years of control of Luzardo for the next 2 years and beyond, who knows? They don't seem to have a keenness and a willingness to extend guys, but I think there's a really interesting fit. And for me, it's a matter of when, not if, with Jesus Luzardo, but I also feel like a when, not if with the Baltimore Orioles. Wait and see. Final topic, just to mention, Brant Brown, former Marlins hitting coach, who did a great job. I've probably oversold it a touch. Who did a job with the Marlins last year, joined the Seattle Mariners. Mariners going okay this year, but offensively, they have not been good. And Brant Brown has been DFA'd, for want of a better description, from the Mariners. I'm just interested to see, for a guy that Skip Schumacher really liked, appreciate there's probably not like an obvious open spot right now, but I do wonder if Brant Brown ends up coming back to the Marlins, rejoining the Marlins staff. There's a job to be done. There's a lot of young guys on this Marlins roster. There's a lot of dead wood as well that we've already talked about, but there's a lot of young guys. And for a guy that Skip Schumacher trusts, a guy that I think we did see, there was a degree of progression seen from guys last year. I think it would be, an interesting an interesting reunion. So that's just a note. It's a noted situation. Brant Brown leaving the Mariners, available. Skip was a fan. Okay, other guys have stepped into that role. And so maybe not. You don't want to have him coming in, treading on other people's toes. And, we have seen progression. Like, Jesus Sanchez, for me, is progressing, continues to progress from where he was a few years ago. That is for sure. Jazz Chisholm Jr., in my opinion, is absolutely progressing. And so, we are starting to see it with some of the guys. They are maturing. Nevertheless, we're running late, so I'll wrap it up there. That's been Locked on Marlins. Sixto Sanchez to the IL. I believe a DFA will be coming by the end of June. The Marlins equally have some decisions to make around what I would describe as roster deadwood, and that includes Sixto, but it also includes Tim Anderson and Avisail Garcia. Those guys are clogging up the roster, taking away opportunities from others that, frankly, deserve them more. What decisions will be made? Wait and see in the coming weeks. I'll see you soon.